quick Utah Jazz update. As you guys know probably by now if you're a Utah Jazz fan, Woj broke the news earlier today that Simone Fontecchio has actually been traded to the Detroit Pistons. Now this trade looks a little bit wild at the very beginning, but it gets a little bit interesting and kind of tells us what's about to come in the future. With that being said, I'm about to do a quick breakdown, and if you have the time, pop it in the live stream later today to find out. With that being said, it's your boy Wraith Hoops. Go ahead and like this video, subscribe, and turn on post notifications for more news about the Utah Jazz and other NBA teams. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get into this one. Now, to put things into perspective, Fontecchio has been a phenomenal shooter for this team. Last season, obviously, he dealt with some injuries, and it was his first year coming over from the Euroleague. With that being said, the Italian sensation has honestly acclimated to the game very well this year, stayed healthy, and been able to provide some solid depth off the bench in the beginning of the season, and then developed into an extreme positive as a starter at that small forward spot, particularly when Lauri Markkanen first went down with injury and then continued to start alongside the man once he came back, providing a lethal front court shooting duo alongside John Collins when his stroke was hitting. With that being said, Fontecchio has played in 50 of the Jazz's games, started in 34 of them, and averaged 23.2 minutes per game. With that being said, he's averaged 8.9 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 1.5 assists to go along with 0.4 blocks and only 1 turnover per game to go along with 0.6 steals. With that being said, he shoots 45% from the field and 39.1% from 3 on 4.7 attempts a night. Now, we all knew that he was going to be a shooter. That was something that we expected him to bring to the table, and this year he's really brought it. Even in games where he lacks that shooting touch and he just manages to have an off night, he still does everything else on the court well. He always finds a way to get some good boards, finds a way to play make and make the extra pass when he knows his shot isn't falling, and make the correct play when he's on the court. And also, he plays hard-nosed defense that a lot of people didn't expect him to play considering the results that we saw last year. Hence why it was so impressive that he was able to acclimate himself to the NBA level of game this early on. With that being said though, his 4.7 3-point attempts marks him 4th on the team, and out of those that shoot 2 or more 3-point attempts, he actually ranks 2nd in percentage, only behind the one and only Lauri Markkanen. Lauri Markkanen shoots 40.7% from 3, while Fontecchio shoots 39.1% from 3. Now, this is a very significant change because that means you're taking away one of the big spacing the floor options that this team has, and really just a great team player that understands the zone concept that Will Hardy tries to have the players play, and one of the big culture pieces. Admittedly, he is an overseas player, so this was the first team that he came to. He called it home, he uprooted his family, and this was the place that he honestly felt at home. Danny Ainge felt like it was in the best interest to go ahead and clean up some minutes for other people and make some other sneaky transactions along the way. But to start it all, he decided to go ahead and send Fontecchio packing out the door to the Detroit Pistons. Now, to put everything into perspective, rather than just summarizing it, we'll go straight to the source. The man A.W. Woj decided to go ahead and drop the bombshell earlier today at 1 p.m. Eastern time, where he said that Kevin Knox, a 2024 second round pick, and draft rights to Gabriele Procida are going to the Jazz in exchange for Fontecchio. Now, a key thing that Woj brings up later on to add extra context to his tweet, he said Fontecchio will be a restricted free agent this summer, and the Pistons made a trade to keep him as part of the franchise's long-term core. Fontecchio had a ton of suitors at the trade deadline, and the Pistons landed him for an early second-round pick and draft rights to Procida. We understand that Kevin Knox is going to be a quick one-and-done rental kind of year guy. He's on an expiring contract as well, but unlike Fontecchio, he's not a restricted free agent in the way that the Utah Jazz would like to re-sign him. The man never really lived up to being one of the top players in his class when he was drafted a few years back, and really there's no reason to believe that he's going to randomly change things now. Considering what the Utah Jazz have at their disposal, the success that they've had, and the fact that they're just coming off of wins against the Milwaukee Bucks and then a really big win against the Oklahoma City Thunder, there's no need to mess up that synergy and throw Kevin Knox into the mix. Now the question becomes, who steps into that starting role, because Fontecchio again had been starting the past several games, and for me that becomes a big question mark, because yes, you have guys off the bench that can provide themselves with more opportunities to get touches and make things happen, but for me it seems like Taylor Hendricks is going to be that next man up. They were hunting for minutes to find for him, and now it looks like they just found a way. Now the other option they currently have is to go ahead and slide Collins into that power forward, small forward spot and put him in a tweener role alongside Lauri Markkanen and move Walker Kessler back to the starting lineup. But I don't think they're going to do that because they also haven't finished their plans as far as trades go. This is the one of what appears to be a couple of trades. I would like to say many, but since Fontecchio was the lone player to get shipped out of here, I think the next one is likely to include THT, some draft capital, and other pieces potentially as well. With that being said, we talked a little bit about the implications of the trade, but to go ahead and put a face to the name of the one interesting player that has been added to the conversation, who also happens to be an Italian himself. Gabriele Procida is actually a 6'7" guard who weighs 194 pounds at the last time when he was weighed in, and is a fairly young prospect compared to Fontecchio. Again, Fontecchio is 28. Procida is actually 21, about to be 22. With that being said, he has an 8'10" standing reach and a 35-inch vertical leap. He's known for catching a couple lobs around the rim on backdoor cuts, off of some screen actions, and also being a reliable three-point shooter in certain leagues. Now, in the Italian A-League, he actually shot more than 38% from three-point range. However, since he transitioned over to the Euroleague, he actually struggled a bit and has dropped down to 27% on his three-point attempts with the Berlin team in simply 16 minutes of action per game over the past 2 seasons. Now, of course, the EuroLeague works on a different type of rate than a lot of other leagues do, and the scoring isn't considered to be as prolific. But that said, most players that play well in the EuroLeague end up transitioning over to the NBA at a very high level, because the only difference is the speed of the game. The EuroLeague is typically more physical, more demanding, and requires more out of the pieces that are involved there. And the schemes are also very difficult to understand from particularly American players that are used to playing a little bit more of the background AAU type style basketball. The EuroLeague is a lot more structured and requires a lot more from the mental aspect and physically demanding aspects of the body for those players. With that being said, Procida doesn't seem to be ready to go ahead and make that transition, which is why the draft rights to him are actually what got traded in the deal, considering that he actually was not playing with the Pistons. Now, this is an interesting situation because I personally have not seen too many situations where this ends up panning out and making a significant difference, though there have been a few where those players go on to be solid role players. With what I've seen on tape from Progida's play style, he seems to have a little bit of sneaky athleticism and he can shoot the 3-ball well. I'm interested to see why in particular he hasn't been able to hit threes at a high enough clip in the EuroLeague, but it could be just the adjustment of competition, the expectation, and the fact that he's only getting 16 minutes per game. With that being said, there's going to be an expectation that when he does eventually become ready in the next few seasons, I would wager 2 to 3, 2 to 4, honestly, will the Utah Jazz be able to use him then as a solid shooter that has the sneaky athleticism that Fontecchio also showed himself at a similar height and length. With that being said though, the expectation for the Pistons is that they end up having Fontecchio re-signed to them and they match whoever ends up putting money down to try and sign him, and then he ends up being the big shooter and one of those mentor pieces for their team. With that being said, their team makes sense on paper and they've won less games than I originally anticipated that they would this year, but I believe that Fontecchio will do great things with that team. Anything can really happen, and I don't think that this is going to be the defining trade and even the biggest trade that the Utah Jazz end up making before the deadline. I think that there's going to be a couple more that come in that make this trade make a lot more sense, because it would be very simple to say this trade was just moved to clear Fontecchio out of the lineup and allow Taylor Hendricks to get more minutes because they feel he's ready now. That would be the easy way out, but I don't think Danny Ainge is that simple-minded, and I think there's a bigger play at work. But with that being said, you guys let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have time tonight, go ahead and pop into the live stream. I'll be streaming at 7 p.m. Eastern time to go ahead and bounce some ideas off you guys and just get a little mind meld going. Here's some grievances. Again, we all did not want to lose Fontecchio because we've become rather fond of him and he's really taken that next step as a professional player, and we just love to have him on the court with the rest of the guys. He melded well, he was a good culture guy, and honestly, for him to come straight from Italy to come play in Utah was a really big thing. It was a really big adjustment for himself and his family, and he will be missed by this roster. With that being said as well, it's your boy Wraith Hoops. Make sure to like this video, comment your thoughts below, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. Go ahead and become a member of the channel to get the videos faster than anybody else and help support the content. With that being said, thanks for tuning in this video. Shout out Tate for giving me the heads up on this information. And as always, good morning, good evening, good night, no matter where you're on the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.